And fans of the show, look, we're putting a show together for you guys. We're just fans of college football, okay? And we're just freak fans that follow football all year long, and that's really what we want you to do is just come along with us. Hit us up in the comment section, like the video, please, and subscribe. All right, welcome in First and Long college football show fans. I'm Marcus. This is my co-host Mason. Mason, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well tonight, Mark. We've had a interesting week so far with SEC media days going on. Um, as college football fans, we know that once the media days start, the season is right around the corner, and we're already. I mean, I at least year round am craving for some sort of content, and when we finally have something, at least even if it's just sometimes the typical coach speak at a press conference, it's still, I think that you can glean some light from this. And as fans, like I said, we're just craving any sort of content, and we finally had it this week, and I think it's been pretty fun, pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I think that it definitely marks the start of the season, right? It's the countdown, and I don't know how many days away we are now. What, about 40 days or so? Um, it's getting closer, and I just cannot wait. It's the longest off season in all the sports, right? I mean, we wait and we wait and we wait, and it's the shortest, one of the shortest regular seasons. Also, I mean, it seems like basketball and baseball last just about all year, and us old college football fans, we're just stuck. Being a lot of times baseball fans. I know a lot of people in the South are Atlanta Braves fans or whatever Major League Baseball team that you may like. So that's getting us through. But man, it's football time, baby. It is football time, and you know what? Storylines are not lacking in the SEC. This is probably the most interesting SEC media days that I really can remember.
Right, and for me, before we get into all the coaches and individual teams, um, in the beginning, Greg Sankey, he was asked. Let me back up. So this is the first time in 38 years that SEC Media Days has been held in Nashville, right? Which is just a city that is blowing up right now. And it's a great city. It's a fun city. There's a lot to like in Nashville. It's in the southern footprint. I understand why some fans would ask for the SEC championship to be moved to Nashville. But when Greg Sankey was asked about that, he basically said no. The SEC championship game will remain in Atlanta at Mercedes Benz. So for everyone who would like to see it in Nashville, year in and year out. Sorry, it's not going to happen. It's stuck in Atlanta. It's staying in Atlanta. And being from Georgia, I'm not mad about it. Right. So I thought that was interesting that he pretty much shot down that idea. It is cool though that they're taking SEC media days to these major cities and big cities, and next year is going to actually be in Austin. To kind of welcome Texas into the SEC. It's going to be really neat. I'd love to go to one of these one day. Maybe when First and Long is a top five podcast, we can show up and ask these coaches the hard hitting questions. But I just thought it was really neat to
Coach,
see
what's
to
your
see them
favorite
kind of
flavor
moving
of
around.
ramen?
Right.
I'd be asking that question. Look, typically, like I said, I don't get into these a whole lot, but it just seems like there's more storylines. It seems like the SEC had been kind of boring a couple years because Alabama was so damn dominant. I mean, yeah, you had a LSU here and there, but it was just, I don't know, it was just the same. Seemed like the same old thing. And I tell you what, this is not your grandfather's SEC media day. Um, this year, and I like the idea of taking it to Texas. I think that's cool. Um,
Yeah.
but you just get your little grubby hands right on off of the SEC championship game because that needs to stay right there at the Mercedes Benz for safekeeping. And I didn't even know that about Greg Sankey. I didn't even know that he got asked that. So I'm glad he went ahead and put the old kibosh on that bad boy. Greg Sankey's that's an interesting character, huh? I mean, that guy.
Yeah, he
He
is.
seems like he's like, I don't know. I tell you what, he reads a lot about soccer leagues and wars
Yeah.
and like,
He's the coolest goober I know. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know how better to explain that.
yeah, and it,
He's a cool cat, but he you can tell he's kinda like Eli, you know? He's kind of a one of those alpha nerds in a way.
yeah. Well, and speaking of Greg Sankey, he actually just got a contract extension as
Right.
the
I heard about
commissioner.
that.
So
Yep.
that wasn't long ago, and uh, it seemed like all the coaches would tell you that he earns that money in that contract. What team are you? Did you enjoy the most? Who is your favorite coach? And we'll just kind of go from there.
Favorite coach?
Can I tell you
There were
mine?
s there were there were so many storylines, but before you get into that, that it's tough to pick a favorite because I think they all did really well, for the most part. We'll get into, Texas A&M in a minute, but, um,
Bingo,
but
bingo. Yes,
but, um,
can't wait.
I honestly, Clark Lee, an interesting choice, right? Vanderbilt, nobody, considers them a powerhouse in the SEC, but I feel like Vanderbilt is on the right track. I don't know if you heard the Cover 3 podcast, either yesterday or today. I listened to their show today, but they had, old Barton Simmons back on the pod, the general managers of the
Mm,
Commodores over there, and, him and Clark Lee just have an interesting dynamic. You know, they've been friends for a long time, and I guess I didn't quite realize what his role was, as the general manager of a college football program. And so what he does is he is essentially in charge of roster management, and that's exclusively what he does. He finds talent, and he allows Clark Lee to coach that talent and spend time with his players, and not have to focus on the recruiting. And it's a unique partnership. You know, it's a unique way to coach in today's college football, in modern era college football. And I was just I was really interested in what he had to say, and that culture that they're creating, I think is really going to do well for them, to where they can go, so that they can go from being a bottom feeder in the SEC to hopefully middle of the pack at some point, and I think eventually get back to where they were under James Franklin, before he made the move to Penn State, and be a team who's, potentially knocking on, maybe 5 years from now, a 12-team playoff door.
yeah, yeah, and they are interesting, and I've been on the record saying that Vanderbilt over under 3.5 was one of the best plays on the board preseason, and I stand by that. I don't know if it's 3.5 anymore. It may have ticked up to 4, and at 4, I don't know if it's depending on how it's juiced or whatnot. It may still be a good bet, but they're going to win at least 4 games this year. And look for Vanderbilt, somebody's got to be the bottom of the conference, and it doesn't mean that they got to take it laying down. And Vanderbilt's not going to. So I'm super happy with the way. And I know anybody who's a fan of Vanderbilt, all three of you are very excited. um, but no, look, AJ Swan is awesome. I can't wait to see him.
Hmm.
Can't wait to see him play. And you know, Barton Simmons. I listened to him a lot back whenever he was on the Cover 3 podcast, um, and really liked the guy. Really smart guy. Ivy League style smarts with that fella. So yeah, I'm very happy with Vanderbilt, but um, putting the everybody's favorite road game aside, which is Vanderbilt, right? Everybody loves to go
Right.
flood Vanderbilt Stadium and enjoy Nashville. Let's go on out to the 12th man, and let's talk about this used car salesman that they call Jimbo Fisher. Okay, this guy uh, is ready to rip your belt off your pants and sell it back to you. I mean, my goodness. I mean, hey, I love this dude's personality. Like he is a football coach through and through. He's like an old school football. He even slipped up and said two a days in his. I mean, this guy did he rehearse it all? I mean, they ask him about, calling the plays on offense. Well, I tell you what, he's a really good staff guy, and tell you what, I hope he gets to call a play. What? What are you talking about? You hope he gets to call a play? What does that mean? Do you speak Jimbo, Mason?
I didn't. So I had to go back several times and and pull the quote that you're talking about because I also listened to that and I thought, hold on a second, because he was getting peppered with questions, right? And these reporters were kind of indirectly asking him, is Bobby Petrino going to call the plays or not? And here's what he said. Quote, he called a lot of, I mean, hopefully he'll call the games. We'll have suggestions on things we do. And he went on to say that play calling is more of a collective effort than people want to give it credit for, but that, quote, when you get to calling, you get on a roll, and you've got to have a guy that can do that. And I think Bobby can definitely do that. He's one of the best in college football. So the first statement, part of that statement says, I hope he can call games. And then the second part says he can call with the best in college football. So where are we at, Jimbo? I mean, what are we doing here?
Somebody went as far
I,
to even ask him, okay, so are you going to be under center? Or are you going to be taking it from the shotgun? And then he went on to tell the reporter that, well, you just haven't even watched any of Bobby's film because
yeah,
he'll send a quarterback under center anytime, and they run play action from there.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what?
He got chippy with a few reporters there.
I mean, it was just this guy. This guy is a firecracker, man. He is a trip. Just a absolute pistol. You don't know what he's about to pop off and say. And then there are certain times that he goes like, Ricky Bobby post race, and you just don't even know where he's going with it. What was there a word in that?
Mhm.
It's just like man, that is a unique situation over there, and um, very entertaining. And look, hey, you know what? I'd love to have a beer with Jimbo Fisher, um, and because I feel like he is probably a pretty funny dude and probably a pretty cool dude to be around. It seems like he's not bought in so much into the I got to say this and just turn down questions, but except for the offense, I mean, he obviously doesn't want to talk about that at all. Um,
No.
but uh, so I like Jimbo as a person. I just this just this whole charade of I'm walking around with top secret Krabby Patty recipe in my pocket and nobody can see it. You know, uh, give me a break, man. I mean, just give me a break. He doesn't want to answer questions. He thinks he's like, you know, deceiving somebody. I just don't, I don't really like
I
that
think
part
it's
of it.
intentional. I honestly think it's he's intentionally trying to confuse um other teams. I would assume. I don't think he has any reason for confusing the media or people like us consuming the content, but I don't know. It's working on me. It's confusing me. It's confusing the hell out of me, honestly. But outside of all that, I think that Jimbo's really feeling the pressure coming from the outside. I got a sense at least that he was more uncomfortable maybe than he was when he just signed the biggest contract in college football history, right? That press conference seemed like a very confident, person, but this press conference seemed like someone who's kind of fighting his way out of a corner. And that's just the vibe that I got. I like Jimbo as a coach. I do think that he's due for a good season. Um, and that was just a feeling that I had. And maybe he's just uncomfortable for whatever reason. I mean, he's been doing. I don't think he would be uncomfortable talking to a room full of reporters, but that just watching him and his body language, it felt a little unnatural to me, and the way he was being defensive when asked about questions specifically about his offense. Um, it was a little worrying to me to see him kind of react that way.
Yeah, yeah. I just I don't know. This is a totally revamped offense, and everybody knows that. I don't think you have to reveal your offense to just say that Bobby's calling the plays. You
Right.
know, and
Exactly.
that's my thing. You don't have to tell us, you know, what you're going to do the first 7 plays of the Alabama game this year. I mean, we're not nobody's asking that. You know, it just that kind of stuff just gets on my nerves. Like he's about to, give away nuclear secrets or something, and um, you know, Texas A&M, there's definitely pressure added to this year. There has to be. I mean, when asked about his that amazing recruiting class that they had, it was the at the time the best recruiting class ever. Um, he said, "Yeah, it was. That was a good class, but this one right here we just got. It ain't ranked as good, but these boys right here, we're more impressed with them, and um, you know that's only going to go so far. I mean, hey, you've got to perform. And I think that they will perform, but not to a tune of 10 wins or anything like that. I think they're going to have a good defense. This team always has a freaking good defense. It is the
Oh yeah.
weirdest. It's the weirdest thing. They hire an offensive coach, and the defense has been. I mean, go back and look at it. They've been top 10, top 15 every year with draft picks. Um, and the offense has just struggled. So I just can't imagine Bobby Petrino coming in and just to be a staff guy, and no matter how good of a guy that Jimbo Fisher tries to tell me that he is. Hey, that's another thing. Jury's already out on Bobby Petrino now.
Hmm.
You're not confusing anybody on what kind of guy Bobby Petrino is. We all know, and that's okay. That's what football coaches are. Football coaches are not uh, typically priest on the weekend. Okay, they're football coaches. So I like these personalities. Um, I think every league's got to have some heels, and I think Jimbo Fisher is a heel. And for those of you that don't know who a heel is, that's a villain. And um, typically people that have horrible seasons like that don't come out of it being a villain. They typically come out and usually things are people are a little more mild mannered towards him. Everybody still is on Jimbo Fisher just like they ever were, as far as other fan bases and things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see um, where Texas A&M goes from here. They've got Connor Wegman back. He talked about Connor Wegman, um, and basically saying that that's his guy. Told us how great of a shortstop he was. Thank you, Jimbo. Um, if anybody's looking for a shortstop, Connor Wegman is at A&M. But as far as playing quarterback this year, he didn't exactly light it up in this offense. But then again, it looked like a terrible offense. They averaged 20 something points a game last year. So
Hmm.
you think they're going to step it up this year? What are your thoughts? I mean, I know it's kind of a hit or miss thing, but like do you like what you're seeing with the offense right now?
Well, I think that we'll end up talking about Texas A&M more when we go through our preseason top 25, and they may not make the top 25, but they may be kind of an honorable mention. But I think that they should progress. My biggest thing with Texas A&M is they have some of the best talent in recent recruiting classes that any team has, right? So
Very talented.
I think that I think it's inexcusable that they haven't produced much of a other than the COVID year, right? They haven't produced under Jimbo Fisher, and I do think that should change. Are they going to win a national championship? Are they going to win an SEC championship?
No.
I don't see it this season,
Hell no.
but they could have a a 9-win season. I think that would be obviously progress. But I think that Texas A&M's would take that after last season.
Yeah. Well, spoiler alert, folks, we've got a top 25 coming. We've been working on it, and perfecting it. I have not seen Mason's, and he hasn't seen mine. But just a little spoiler, I do have Texas A&M in my top 25
Mhm,
for this year, and I'm predicting them to go, like you said, I'm saying around 8 wins is what I'm thinking.
mhm.
But um,
That's fair, yeah.
they they've got some offensive line. Um, that they got to work on. They were dead last in pressure allowed last year, and um, I mean, I'm talking about dead last in America. And Steve Adazio comes in, and what maybe one day, whenever we go more in depth on Texas A&M, we'll talk about why Steve Adazio left Colorado State. That was pretty controversial. So here we are. We got another offensive guy with a controversial exit from the school. I mean, this place is absolutely just overflowing with storylines. So when that top 25 comes, I can't wait to talk more.
And
Texas
Jimbo's leaning
A&M.
into that. Jimbo in his press conference said, "Yeah, I encourage these dynamic attitudes and it's just it would be so fun to just watch, to just spend a day in the
A
office
fly on
with
the wall,
Jimbo.
dude. A fly on the
Yes,
wall of the offices at
that
Texas A&M. My gosh. Wow. Oh man.
just the attitudes, but maybe we should move on from Texas A&M. I think Jimbo's gotten our wrath, I guess, enough here.
Hey, Jimbo,
We
let's
had
have
fun
a
with
beer,
that one.
buddy. Hey, let's have a
But
beer and we'll talk about it. All right.
um did you have a chance to watch Brian Kelly at LSU? I thought he was interesting. But one takeaway that I'll have, and then I'll let you have the floor. But in the beginning, and hearing myself now that we've been doing this podcast, hearing myself back and watching, what I do, how I talk, how I speak, and things like that. I thought Brian Kelly uses filler words like and ah more than I do when you put a microphone in front of me. So that made me feel pretty good about myself. I don't make millions of dollars, and hearing him just fill his speech with these filler words, it was just it was quite comical for me. But what was your takeaway with LSU?
Well, so uh, just a little preface for the show. So I actually, uh, and I love watching Josh Pate's show. Um, Josh Pate did a one-on-one with him after he had come off stage and everything, and I feel like I got a little bit more out of that than I did actually what the reporters were asking. Felt like he was a little more comfortable, but you know, Brian Kelly, I gotta give it to the guy. You know, you got to go back to whenever he first came, and he's dancing with recruits, and he's talking about his family, moving down to Louisiana. So he was a little bit of a fish out of water, right? I mean, we all kind of saw it, but you know, a good damn football coach is a good damn
Hmm.
football coach. I mean, let's just real recognize real like this guy is definitely taking LSU in the right direction. I have no doubt about that. And he's going to have more talent than ever. But I was very impressed with his ability to just lay it all out there. And this is like the opposite of Jimbo. Jimbo won't tell you anything. Brian Kelly just pretty much told you flat out, "Hey, our weakness is our secondary. We took, elite teams don't take 12 guys in the transfer portal, and we did, and they're all on defense. Um, and that's not what elite teams do. We've got a good team, uh, and high school recruiting has got to be more of a focus for if you're going to be elite, if you're going to be a championship winning team." And he is dead right. You listen, transfer portal, some of these middling to lower teams are just taking 20 guys, 30 guys, 50 guys if you're Colorado. To be an elite team, you're not going to build an elite squad out of transfers, and that's what LSU secondary is. We're used to seeing LSU be DBU. But guess what? That's not happening this year. That's not who they are. They're going to need guys to step up that have came in from other places like East Louisiana. Um, the list goes on and on. They've got running back from Notre Dame that I actually am very excited about. But uh, I thought he just kind of laid it all out there, and I can admire that, and um, I think it'll probably serve him well because don't think for a second that these players aren't going to see all these clips and all this stuff from media days. They're going to go watch it, and
They're gonna see 1st and Long in these clips and us talking about it, you
they're
know?
here they're here now. They're watching now, um, and they're going to go back and think about what we're saying right now. Um, But no, I just I really admire what he's done. I think it'll motivate those guys when they do see it, uh, and hopefully, hopefully they can step up for him because um, that LSU never has an easy schedule, um,
Right.
but this secondary is going to have to step up if they're wanting to get where they want to go, and that's winning the SEC and going to the playoffs.
Right, and what I thought was interesting in hearing Brian Kelly, who I think like I feel like if I met Brian Kelly, he's the type of guy that would smell like baby powder. I don't know why. He just gives me that
Mm,
vibe, you
yeah.
know.
Hmm.
But I thought it was interesting that he seemed to be very focused on talking about in his interview with Josh Pate or the press conference. He was very focused on talking about consistency as a program, and I started to think about it. Has there been a more, you know, well, typically up, but kind of an up and down team than LSU? I mean, the highs of winning championships, and then I mean the lows of having to fire Ed Orgeron just 2 seasons after that, and even before that, I mean with Les Miles, he was a very roller coaster season to season type of coach for a little while there to the point where they had to fire him. But going back probably the last 20 seasons, this has been one of the more one of the more wild rides of a college football team, and I feel like Tiger fans must be craving this idea that Brian Kelly's talking about of creating this consistent team that is constantly in the competition, making playoff games and making it to the SEC championship. I thought that was really interesting, and I think that they are on their way. I mean, Louisiana is a hotbed for talent. A lot of people don't realize this, but for high school football in the state of Louisiana, they have the most Division 1 athletes per student of any state in the country. And LSU does a better job than any team in the country of keeping that talent in state. So, therefore, X plus Y equals Z, right? LSU has a lot of talented guys, and they're going to continue to have that. They're only going to continue to have that as Brian Kelly creates, like he's saying, this more consistent team that is not only winning games but producing NFL talent at a consistent level, which they have done historically, long before Brian Kelly came about. But this is a it's tough to call LSU a sleeping giant, but I do think that they have maybe underperformed over the last 10 seasons or so from where this team could be potentially.
Yeah, absolutely, and that they kind of remind me of Auburn, the way that it seemed like there for a while. It was every other year Auburn was, knocking on the door of a BCS game. Um, but all you LSU fans, I feel like you got a good coach there, and I do feel like he's going to get that situation straightened out in the secondary. And you know what? Hey, they may be able to handle that this year. And uh, there's not, you know, it's not often you say this, but you look around the SEC this year. There's not a ton of returning quarterbacks. Not super great ones anyway. So if there's a year to maybe ease your way into the pool as far as the secondary goes. Maybe maybe this is it. But overall, I think he did a great job, just kind of laying it all out there. And I do. Brian Kelly has grown on me since he's been at LSU. Um, Now, are they winning the SEC this year? That's yet to be seen. The offense should be pretty daggone good. So I think that they'll be able to score the points. Uh, it's going to depend on that defense. But I will say this: nothing was more entertaining than when Coach O showed up to media day. So, Coach O, shout out to you, brother.
Wanted to get bigger. I'll stop. Hey, stop the ball, stop the drill. I'm having a press conference. Thank you.
Brother, yeah, hang in there.
It's
Maybe they'll get you a job in the office somewhere up there, man. LSU needs you back. Go Tiger,
this media days reminded me that at one point for SEC media days, you had you had Coach O, Mike Leach, and Sam Pittman all doing media days. Not in the same season, I guess. And I guess I feel like the SEC media days maybe lacked a little bit of that character, that personality, but especially with Mike Leach not being there. But it was still entertaining nonetheless. But those are irreplaceable personalities for sure.
yeah, absolutely. We need more of that, and we've got more of that coming up. I guarantee you, Lane Kiffin will. What would we say? We got Lane, Shane, and Heupel. That
Mhm.
sounds like some kind of TV show or something. But Lane is the one that's he's good for a couple headlines. Probably going to call out Nick Saban about something. So can't wait to see that. We've got one of those characters coming up here. I guess in a day or so. Um,
Mhm.
but
Or
speaking of Nick Saban, what did you think about? Uh, what did you think about his? This is probably one of the ones I watch lesser of because he just bores the ever living crap out of me. So
yeah, yeah. I thought this year he seemed more relaxed, and I thought last year he seemed more
it's
relaxed than
because
the year
he went to
prior to that.
Italy. He went to Italy,
That's what
bro.
that was kind of my talking point. It's like, hey, maybe it's because he went to Italy, but
That's it.
I also think that he has, in a good way, relaxed a little bit on his staff and on his players, right? And it, it can be taken as a negative, but I think that it could be healthy as well. In creating the culture, well, not creating, but refining the culture that they have in Alabama. But one thing that I got from this, it was interesting to hear Nick Saban talk about humility, right, and how he has articulated the importance of humility to his players and to his staff. Then, ironically, one of the players he brought with him, J.C. Latham, outstanding defensive lineman. He's a preseason All American, and he was a 5-star coming out of high school, out of IMG Academy. This guy is an absolute stud. Um, but after Nick Saban spoke about humility and how the players that he brought with him understand the importance of humility, J.C. Latham went out and said that the Tide are going to win it all, a national championship, undefeated, the Joe Moore, and I want that Outland.
Oh boy.
And I just thought, not trying to pick on the kid, really not. Um, I just thought it was too funny not to share, and too ironic, that probably an hour after Nick Saban says that, he's on the stand talking about all of these things that him and his team are going to do, and maybe not really um, taking that humility pill very well.
Yeah. Look, it's been pretty well known that Bryce Young is gone. Okay, from this team, Will Anderson is gone. Uh, Two guys that were generational talents and showed up at media days. those last couple years and rocked it out and embraced challenges and showed humility. Um, but calling your shot is not something that I would necessarily do. Um, but um, you know, Alabama is one of they're in the top 10 for teams that could win a national championship this year. So, um, and the kid's betting on himself. So, hey, you go get it. But you talk that talk, you got to walk that walk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, Bama to me, I don't. I'm not going to say they're not a favorite to win, in my opinion, the national championship, which is obviously what their expectations are, according to JC Latham, and that is kind of the standard that Nick Saban has set. But they're not my pick to win it, and they're not even really that high on my list to win it, just based on them playing in the SEC, having to go against LSU, having to go against UGA. So I mean, but they are good enough to do it, right? Let's not. It's not poor old Alabama, right? Let's. They still have the most talented roster in college football, so they could definitely win the national championship. But if they don't, and that's your expectation, then what happens if you don't do that? Then it's an unsuccessful season,
Yeah,
and I don't think it should be that way. That's not really what college football is.
yeah. Well, uh, look, and I'll say this: Nick Saban's the best coach to ever do it. Okay, everybody else is you know everybody else that's on that list is kind of close together. Nick Saban is the best coach there ever was. Um, and but you can only come out and say after a year where you didn't win the national championship that it was a rebuilding year. You can't say it multiple times, okay? And that's not the standard at Alabama. And this year, um, I mean, wouldn't you I would classify this as a rebuilding year. Whereas I do think it is going to be a good defense. Um, you don't have a returning quarterback. It was one of the worst receiver cores as far as drop balls last year. Um, you Alabama fans will say they lost a couple games by a point or two. Well, you won a couple games by a point or two also. So I'm not super high on this team winning a national championship this year, but if it's going to happen, it's going to have to be a different style than we're used to seeing from Alabama, and um, changing your style from a finesse team to a more physical approach and running the ball. I don't think that that's something you can just snap your fingers and hey, uh, we're going back to bully ball. Well, there's teams that maybe you can't bully quite like you used to. And if you think you're going to win a championship by running the football alone, those days are gone, buddy. It's not happening.
Hmm.
Nobody's ran the football on Georgia successfully to win a game in 5 years. It's about to win a big game, you got to have a quarterback that's going to make clutch plays, and you've got to have wide receivers that catch the ball after they get open, and you've got to be able to do multiple things. And this team doesn't seem multiple to me.
Right. And I do see that as a struggle. For Alabama, um, this is not the dynamic team that we've seen. This is not the finesse team that we've seen Alabama win with in recent history. This is seemingly this is going to be a reversion back to maybe like '08, '09, 2010 type Alabama. And this is just a different league at this point. And you know, like you said, you're not going to run on Georgia and expect to win the game when they're able to, like let's say, hypothetically, you're able to stop Georgia's rushing attack. They can still go over the top on you, and they have a good enough receiving core to do that. And I'm not saying that Bama does not have the receiving core to do that. I'm just saying that between that and the quarterback, I think that they're unproven. They are, again, the most talented team in the country, and nobody's denying that. But they are unproven in that, and I haven't seen the dynamic playmakers that Nick Saban is used to having, and so I think it's fair to doubt them a little bit this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, and i- if your approach is going to be going and running the football, you better have an outstanding offensive line and outstanding running backs. And look, I mean, uh, Justice Haynes is coming into Alabama, and I've heard good things. And this was a guy that I thought the Georgia Bulldogs were going to get. Um, and he was a 5-star. And freshmen, I've said before, I do feel like freshmen can step in and play running back. But it's him and McClellan, and then just kind of like a platoon of backs. So it seems like it's going to be running back by association. I mean, there's no Derrick Henry here. Okay. And the wide receiver core has gotten a little bit better, I would say, just by, default, by adding, guys that came in through recruiting and things like that. But you're still relying on Jermaine Burton. Okay. And Jermaine has got to step up for what I think is going to be a pretty daggum good defense. I do think the Alabama secondary is going to be awesome this year. Georgia's secondary is going to be awesome this year. Those are, I think, probably the two best secondaries in the SEC. Um, but boy, are the offenses looking different? And who would have thought we'd have said a few years ago that Georgia's got a loaded wide receiver room and Alabama wide receivers have got to step up? I mean, you can't predict this stuff. And another thing, who's going to get those guys the ball, man? the, the old saying used to be, if you've got, and I don't agree with this at all, but the old saying used to be, if you got two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks, right? Well, what if you have three? I don't think that if you have two, you don't have any quarterback. I think that's not true. But if you have three quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback. You went and got a guy from Notre Dame who completed around 50% of his passes last year.
Mhm.
And uh, Nick Saban felt like this was necessary. I mean, all these awesome recruiting classes, and you don't have a quarterback ready to go. Um, things just aren't as sturdy as what they seemed a few years ago. Um, like I said, nobody will ever take it away from Nick Saban. He's the best there ever was. Alabama is the best dynasty so far that there's ever been. But going and winning a national championship this year, or having you know guys winning this award, that award, it's way too early for all that. And um, we got to see some stepping up from the Alabama uh, personnel and players. And uh, if they're going to install a mindset of we're going to run you over this year, well then they're already behind, because that should have been happening last year, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of teams that are used to running other teams over, Georgia, Kirby Smart takes the stand, and for the second season in a row, he talks about battling complacency. Right, that's their biggest challenge. It's not so much who their opponent is week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Auburn. It's not that, because they have a weak schedule. Let's just face it. It's a weak schedule this season, um, but it's still an SEC schedule, and those teams can sneak up on you. And Kirby knows that. If you may have the best team in football, and I think that they do. I think that they have Um, the best talent combined with the most experience in college football. Last season was a rebuilding year for Georgia, and they still won a national championship. But so once again, you have to battle complacency so that you are able to get better. The new motto for Georgia this season is "Better Never Rest." And it's such a Kirby thing to say, to create this slogan to motivate his team. And I think it's another example of how or why Kirby is the best motivator in all of college football. Um, he's a great coach. He's a great defensive coach. But the more I hear his interviews and him talking about the culture that he's created at Georgia, the more I realize that this guy's not coaching anymore. I mean, he is. He is coaching, but in the grand scheme of things, he's a motivator. He's someone who is spending time with his team. He talks about these skull sessions all the time and how he's going he's going to as many of these different skull sessions as possible to spend time with those specific players. And I just think it's really unique. I know Kirby doesn't really rest. I know that he's working around the clock, but it seems like nowadays, since they've been on this run, more than in the past, since they've been on this run, he's really spent time getting to know his players and making sure that the players know each other, and that's kind of been his main focus. And he's kind of got this train rolling, right? So he's able to step back. Um, so I thought that was pretty interesting to hear him go into detail about where things are at and the state of the program right now. Um, what were your takeaways from hearing the old ball coach talk?
Yeah, I think Kirby has gotten a lot better year over year at this whole media thing, and dealing with the reporters and the tough questions. Georgia has had some uh, culture issues in question, whether they were issues or whatnot. I think he is really comfortable, like you said, though, with the rooms that he's built. He's got coaches in each room that are preaching from the book of Kirby, and I think he feels more comfortable with that than he ever has. Um, there's a lot of ex Georgia guys over there on that staff. This past year they went and hired, or they didn't hire him. They promoted Mike Bobo to take over as offensive coordinator, and which is a former Georgia guy and a former college football head coach, and has been offensive coordinator at Georgia before. So Kirby's got, I think, a lot of his people around him. I thought it was interesting. Uh, Now you're after the Northwestern thing that's happened with Pat Fitzgerald. I feel like every single coach now is going to be getting asked about, is this going on here? And Kirby, came out, and I thought he gave a very clear and convincing no to that. And so I think you're going to hear every coach get asked that you know uh, perforated cutout question. But Kirby is a much better speaker than he used to be. I think that's what, making about $10 million a year will do for you. He's probably got him a coach. You talked about him. I've never heard Kirby talk about taking as much time off as what he's taking. That kind of surprised me. Um, Talking about how he spent 4 or 5 days locked away with his extended family, and how they went on a vacation before that. And it definitely seems like the back-to-back national championship winning head coach is pretty doggone relaxed. Um, and whereas this team does not have the most talented roster in the nation overall as far as rankings and ratings go, like you said, I think the combination of the experience that Georgia has with the guys that they have, uh, man, it's going to be pretty tough to derail the Bulldogs. I think this year, that you mentioned the schedule. They were supposed to have Oklahoma. If I was in that room, I would have liked to ask, Kirby, um, why Georgia had to give that up. I mean, that was a non-conference game this year. They said the SEC asked them not to play Oklahoma. You know, Georgia could have played Oklahoma. I mean, that was a non-conference game. The SEC has nothing to do with telling you who you can play in your non-conference. So, um, anyway, I felt overall good about what Kirby had to say and the state of Georgia.
Absolutely. So we've talked about Alabama. we've talked about Georgia. Now let's meet somewhere in the middle and head to the Plains out there at Auburn. Um, Coach Coach Hugh Freeze. This is he's one of two first year head coaches in the SEC. Um, Obviously, we know the backstory here with Coach Freeze. I don't think it's really my place to talk about his history and what he did in the past. That's been belabored. He was invited back to the SEC. Auburn, welcomed him with open arms after the Brian Harsin sort of debacle. Um, and I think that, and let me speak on that for a minute because I think from what I've heard, Brian Harson is actually a pretty good coach. I don't think he belongs in the SEC, and I don't mean because he's not a good enough coach to be in the SEC. I mean because he's not a good enough recruiter, and he's not a, or maybe not good enough, but he doesn't fit this recruiting style in the South like Coach Freeze and some of these other coaches do. Um, but the boosters got what they want, somewhat in Hugh Freeze. There's speculation that maybe they were going after Lane Kiffin, and Coach Freeze was a backup plan, but I think that they like who they have, and one of the things going back to the boosters and the donors there, one of the things that Coach Freeze spoke about was alignment, and he kept bringing that word up, alignment. And what he's talking about is the alignment of the fans to the team, to the coaches, to the boosters, to the front office, to the president. Um, that is the alignment that he's talking about. And that's something that Auburn has lacked probably more than any of the other 13 teams in the SEC, is that alignment. It seems like, like with Auburn, we're always hearing about how the boosters aren't happy about something that's going on, and how they're running the program and this and that. And it seems like, if this is what he's bringing to the table and talking about at SEC media days, some other conversations have been had, emphasizing this alignment. And I hope for the Tigers' sake and for Coach Freeze's sake that it's true, because I think that Auburn is a sleeping giant, right? And they've been asleep for a few seasons now. And if they're able to create this alignment that UGA at Bama and LSU may finally have, right, in that alignment, then this is another dangerous team, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I that's very interesting information there. And Kirby dealt with this just a little bit whenever he came to Georgia. Definitely not to the extent that Hugh Freeze is dealing with it at Auburn. Nick Saban dealt with it at Alabama a pretty good bit. I don't know what it is about those Alabama schools, but the donors were playing a really big role at Alabama when Nick Saban got there, and it's kind of a tough process, weeding that type of, I don't know, attitude towards the program out. And it sounds like Hugh Freeze is working on doing that. Um, you know, you can think what you want to think about Hugh Freeze. There's going to be negative recruiting that goes on against Hugh Freeze, and just because of his past and things like that. Uh, you know what? People make mistakes, and he'll be the first one to tell you that he made a mistake. And um, you know, just kind of listening to him this off season, it seems like he has taken a kind of a different approach to the social media aspect of everything. This was a guy who, on a certain college football show that I watched that I won't name, they talked about him one day, and as soon as they came off air, he had directly messaged them on Facebook saying,
Mm.
what are you talking about? Um, you know, is that what you want out of your head coach? I mean, yeah, you want to have your ear to the ground and understand what's going on. Um, one of the things that's in his contract at Auburn is that uh, they get to control his social media, and I think that the alignment that he talks about. I think that it is coming to the fold, and it's not going to be a 1 year, not going to be a 1 year fix at all. But this guy seems to be taking the show in the right direction, and I like the roster management stuff that he's doing. Uh, it leaves you kind of with a lot of question marks, but they really attacked the portal, and I've been impressed with who they've brought in. Uh, I don't know if you see the Cole Kubelik interview with On Three. He was there at SEC Media Days, and Cole Kubelik is a huge Auburn guy. Did you happen to see that?
I did not see that one,
Okay,
no.
so Cole Kubelik, ladies and gentlemen, there's very few people talk all the time about watching film. Watching film, YouTube's not film. Okay, film is all 22, and very few people are watching that. I don't even know where you would get it. But Colt Kubelik is one of the all. I'd call him an all 22 guy. He can get on the crease board like the one that's behind me right here, and he can break it down. I promise you. But he is an Auburn insider, played football there, and he says that Peyton Thorne is absolutely going to be the starter for this year. So that was one thing that I definitely took away from maybe not Coach Hugh Freeze. He didn't say that himself, but Cole Kubelik is somebody that I trust on that topic, and uh, that's says a lot about where they. And we knew with them taking a transfer quarterback that they didn't feel great, and we all saw Robbie Ashford play last year. There was not anything to feel great about. Um, so I thought that that was a very interesting takeaway. Uh, Anytime you go to SEC Media Days and you can get some information like that, that answers some questions for me. And but he did say that Robbie Ashford will play. Um, so what do you think about Peyton Thorne coming in and being able to play quarterback for the Auburn Tigers?
Well, I mean, I honestly don't know too much about him. Auburn hasn't been on my radar very much this
Yeah.
season. This off season, I'm very interested in them. So it's not from a lack of intrigue, but studying, their roster and going into what they're going to be this season, I just don't have very high expectations. If they win 8 games, I think that's going to be remarkable. Honestly, for Auburn from where they were last season. So I'm excited to see Peyton Thorne. I just honestly I don't know much about the player, but I trust Cole Kubelik like you said, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do. With him.
So they've got Jarquez Hunter that's back, um,
Okay,
and
that may be,
yeah,
yeah.
Jarquez is a freak, and he was one of the two of that running back tandem last year. Um, and look, I've done a little bit more of a deep dive into Auburn because I'll let you guys in on another little secret. I actually have Auburn in my top 25 to end the year, and
Interesting.
I feel like this coach. I believe in his coaching ability above everything else. You know, we talked just a little bit ago in the show about these guys are not priests on the weekends. Okay, this guy, um, he's a football coach, man. And this is a violent game, guys. Guys that play that game, not all of them are saints. Okay, not everybody that coaches it are saints, and that's all right. And people deserve a second chance. So beyond all that, I feel like his offensive acumen is second to none. Really, I mean, I'd put him right on up there with all the best offensive minds in the game. And he has, showed us how to turn chicken poop into chicken salad with quarterbacks. And I think um, he's going to find a package for Robbie Ashford. And Peyton Thorne is an interesting quarterback because his first year at Michigan State, he absolutely lit it up, right? And this was an offense that was pretty well to do, had a really great running back that ended up in the NFL, um, and is going to be really good in the NFL. But when this guy had a running game, he had great numbers as a quarterback. I mean, he really did. Whenever they couldn't run the ball, he was a middling quarterback. So I think you could say that for a lot of quarterbacks. I don't think it's just Peyton Thorne. If you can't run the football and everybody knows and the jig is up, you know that what you're about to do. I mean that makes this game a whole lot harder. Whenever you've got everybody just kind of stepping back into coverage because they're not worried about the run. So that's not going to be the case at Auburn. Auburn does have a good run game. That is one thing that they have had decent. And I feel like the O line, it's while it will be entirely different, um, I think it will be a decent one. I think that they'll be able to patch that stuff together. They've got some good wide receivers coming in. Camden Brown is going to probably progress this year. So yeah, Auburn is while in my 20 to 25 slot somewhere in there, they're not top 15 team or anything like that. I think that this is very interesting to watch because, as you said, Auburn is definitely a sleeping giant. There's no doubt about that.
Right, and I don't have any doubts that that Coach Freeze is going to step in and there will be fireworks in year
Yeah.
one. He's going to take somebody out. He's a little sniper,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Somebody's going to drop, and I'm excited to see who it is. Honestly, I think that you know, I'm not going to say I I think that Georgia could take a loss at Auburn in what, week 6, I believe. I
Five or
know it's
six,
September
something like
30th.
that.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say that, but this is a game that's going to be at Auburn. This is going to be uh, Georgia's starting quarterback, whoever that is. We still assume that it's Carson Beck, but we don't fully know, especially that far into that first third of the season. But this is going to be their first road test in the SEC. Maybe there are some hiccups. Maybe they can make it interesting until the fourth quarter, and there would be a lot to glean from that. I think that if this is a one score game heading into the fourth quarter against UGA, that's that's a win for Auburn, and maybe Coach Freeze could gain some momentum out of that, and maybe pull off an upset, and take out an LSU or a team like that. Um, it's a really really interesting team there in the SEC with Coach Freeze. Maybe not as interesting of a team from a competitive standpoint, but and maybe not as interesting of an interview. Really was Missouri's Eli Drinkwitz, right? Um, I don't know if you heard about his filibuster, but he pretty much just talked for about 15 minutes straight, of his 30-minute press conference. He opened the floor and he just went on and on and on and kept talking, and didn't leave much there, much time there for questions. And even when he was asked questions, he would talk and talk and talk and talk, and there weren't, I think maybe 5 questions were asked in the remaining 15 minutes. But I thought that was kind of funny to hear from Eli. I do feel like Eli is the type of coach that really does everything he can, like a lot of these coaches do. But he really does everything that he can to veer out of the direction of the media, and whether that's tactics like using coach speak or whatever he can do. He's always trying to attract as little attention as possible, and maybe that's not the right way to say that, but I think he's trying to not give any information up, that could hurt his team. But one of the things that he did talk about schematically, I guess, is that Luther Burden moves to the slot to replace Dominic Loving, which you know. Um, I think, excuse me, my dog just barked back there, but kind of threw
What's
me
up,
off. But
Ozzy?
yeah. But yeah, so Luther Burden replaces Dominic Lovett. And I think that this is just a schematic that they're trying to take their best playmaker and move him to the best position that fits this offense.
Yeah, so Coach Drinkwitz talked about one thing that I thought was very interesting. He's no longer going to be calling all the plays offensively. He is relinquishing those duties to Kirby Moore to call all the plays. So, as we talked about before, with the Kirby kind of being like a CEO of his team now, to me, it kind of seems like um, Coach Drinkwitz is kind of trying to replicate that, um, and really in more than one way, as far as roster building goes, as far as culture goes, as far as coaching duties go. I feel like Coach Eli Drinkwitz is kind of taking a book out of Kirby Smart's, taking a page out of his book. What what do you think about him not calling the plays anymore? And why can we not get Jimbo Fisher to just come out and tell us this also?
Maybe it's a little stab at Jimbo there, where he, he's a little bit more forthcoming about what's to
Yeah,
come, and maybe he has more trust in Kirby Moore. This isn't a coach that I have a whole lot of familiarity with, so but I'm excited to see what he can do there at Mizzou. And you mentioned CEO. Eli even mentioned taking a CEO approach, moving forward. And I think it'll be interesting. I think that's the way he's got to move with this program. Um, I think it's fair to ask: is it too soon to maybe take that approach as a CEO? Um, is his fingerprint really all over this Missouri program to the point where he can step away? I think that's a fair question. And who am I to say? But it seems like I know he's been there for quite a few seasons now. I think this is his fourth or fifth now, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but he really hasn't had the success, I don't think, to warrant taking a step back and letting new offensive coordinators take over the offense. And this should be his offense at this point, right? This is now the Missouri offense who has um, well, he's implemented his offense into Missouri. So now this is now the Missouri offense. It's no longer Eli's. So I get it from that aspect. We'll see how it works out. I think it could. I think it's fair to question whether or not it's premature, but it also could work out in his favor. I'm anxious to see it play out.
yeah, I am too. And kind of like I talked about before with Jimbo, it's odd, to see a team with a head coach that is, you know, brought in on one side of the ball. Eli Drinkwitz is an offensive guy. We just talked about how he has been calling the plays, and he's not going to be doing that anymore. But it seems like a lot of his confidence is in the defense of this team, and so I find that fascinating. He feels like this is going to be, and I think he's just telling the truth. I think this is going to be a good Missouri defense. And if you go look at all the power rankings from last year, defense was not the problem for this team. Absolutely was not the problem. Everybody in the world remembers the Georgia and Missouri game last year. Really, the only person that, other than Ohio State, that gave Georgia any trouble at all last year during the season
Mhm.
was Missouri, and it was because of that defense. Um, it seems like Missouri has always got a good defensive line. Uh, they're going to play Kansas State again this year. The Kansas State fans were quick to tell me online about our last video that this is something that's played often or every year. Um, so somehow I missed that last year, but I can't wait to see that matchup. But this Missouri team, I think, is going to be fun to watch. And I do think the offense takes a step forward. I couldn't imagine the defense being better than it was last year necessarily, but it doesn't have to be. As long as it's similarly as good, this is going to be a team that can get to 7 or 8, maybe 8 wins. Whenever you look at the East, I don't see a dominant team outside of Georgia, and possibly Tennessee on that second tier. But maybe Mizzou, this is their year to climb up the ranks a bit and take out some of those South Carolinas, the Kentuckys. It's going to be really interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's another example of how the East is um, really becoming a. And I know we're doing away with divisions next season, but for the last season we have divisions at least. It seems like the East has a lot of middling SEC programs, and if Missouri can prove to be one of those, if Vanderbilt can prove to be one of those, I think Vanderbilt may be a few seasons away from doing that, but I think
Beat
that
Florida last year though.
that's true. Beat Florida, beat Kentucky. Snapped
Unbelievable.
a 26 game SEC loss streak, and it was their first SEC win since 2019. But Vandy, another one of those teams like Missouri, who I think is kind of on the rise in a way, as long as they kind of don't get in their own way. Um, so, speaking of middling SEC teams, let's head out west to Mississippi State, where Zach Arnett joins Hugh Freeze as the only first year coach in the SEC. I really like this hire. When I watched his interview, I thought that Zach uh, Arnett really seemed to carry himself well for his first time on this big stage. He has really tough shoes to fill after the sudden loss of the Pirate coach Mike Leach. Um, and my understanding is that he will be running a much different strategy. I'm not much of an X's and O's guy, to be honest with you, but my understanding is he's stripping away the air raid offense. There's going to be a lot more quarterback play in the shotgun and under center. I'm taking a wait and see approach on Zach Arnett, but just hearing him talk, I thought that he's steering the ship, the old pirate ship, in the right direction. What were your thoughts on Mississippi State, and what are your thoughts on this program? I think that look, Mississippi State's a pretty good program with where they're at with Will Rogers coming back. He's got an experienced quarterback. He's not inheriting a bad program, and he was a part of the program last season. So I think it's a great hire for them. I think it made sense. I'm anxious to see if he's able to sort of reach their full potential there at Mississippi State, or if this may be a bit of a hire that made sense at the moment, but maybe they're waiting for a better hire down the road. Again, I'm taking a wait and see approach, but what are your thoughts so far coming out of Starkville?
Yeah, I like the coach Zach Arnett. Um, Stark Vegas is I feel like a unique place, and I think it takes a unique uh, situation to make that machine go. Um, Rest in peace to the pirate. We are all obviously going to miss him, but he definitely leaves behind a um, an impression on this team. Right? They're not just going to shake all their tendencies in 1 year because that coach is gone. So with Zach Arnett, he was the defensive coordinator last year. Um, so this is a defensive mind coming onto a staff that was built around the offense. Um, I could see maybe where this could work. You've got somebody who's going to emphasize defense. That was a problem for Mississippi State last year. Uh, this is a team that has been fairly consistent over the last few years. They're going to win 6, 7, 8, ball games. Um, Not always an easy out. Great home environment. Anybody that has to go play there is they're going to know they went through Stark Vegas. So um, I think things are actually setting up to be pretty decent. I haven't even mentioned Will Rogers, and so let me do him his justice. This guy, by the end of the year and about halfway through the year, you're gonna see lots of record book things that are happening for him because he's been in the SEC for a while and thrown for thousands and thousands and thousands of yards. This guy's got a ton of snaps, ton of experience. Um, One of the few, definitely the most experienced and talented returner as far as quarterbacks in the SEC as far as I'm concerned. So, um, whereas it's, you know, boring old Stark Vegas, I tell you what, I think it's going to be an interesting year, and and I, I don't envy a team that has to go in there and go play that team this year. They're going to be a tough out. I have a feeling.
Absolutely. And speaking of quarterbacks who are set to break records this season, staying out west with Arkansas, going out there to Little Rock. Um, Sam Pittman took center stage, and what what a joy just seeing him speak. He's such a personality, one of the best in the SEC. Just seems like, I mean, if you got a chance to drink a beer with somebody, I mean, right now I think that's totally the one. He just seems like a really cool cat.
If your
Um,
lawnmower was broke, you would want to ride it over to Sam's, right into his garage, go in his beer fridge in the garage, or maybe a kegerator, and you each pour one, and the lawnmower never even gets fixed. It doesn't ever even get fixed. You end up just riding it home broke, and hoping the police doesn't see you riding your lawnmower down the road. That's the type of guy Sam Pittman is. He seems like he'd be like the guy right down the street that you borrow a cup of sugar from, or ask to feed your dog while you're out of town. I just love this guy.
Look, if your lawnmower gets you to and from Sam Pittman's house, is it actually
The
broken?
PTO
I
won't
mean,
engage, Mason. The PTO will not engage. And Sam isn't even getting down there to look at it. Sam just has a nice garage, and the kegerator's full. So that's just the first thing that you think of. You're actually kind of relieved that you don't have to cut the grass. Now you get to go down to Sam's house.
that's right. That's right. So one of the more interesting things, that Sam Coach Pittman opened up with is that well, like I said, KJ Jefferson, who you mentioned, experienced quarterbacks in the SEC. KJ Jefferson is up there with all of them. I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but I believe he leads the SEC in Heisman odds, or like maybe Jaden Daniels, but um, they are 1A and 1B there. Anyways, he Coach Pittman said that he's on pace to break about 6 or 7 records this season. With his experience and all that, and so it should be a very historic season for KJ. His name's going to be all over, ESPN and CBS and all over college football. But one of the other things that Coach Pittman talked about were the other two players that he brought, Rocket Sanders and Landon Jackson. So Rocket Sanders, who you probably know about, but he's the running back who ran for over 1,400 yards last season for Arkansas, and Coach Pittman said that he gained about 10 pounds this offseason and is running faster than ever on his GPS. And the other player that I mentioned, Landon Jackson, he's a defensive lineman who had a pretty good season last year. Had 3 sacks and 3.5 tackles for a loss. And he said that he went from 236 pounds to 280. And this guy is like a scary, like Lex Luthor, and at 280, he's just like a jacked, bald, scary looking dude. And so, but my point is that those pigs over there have been putting in work in the weight room. Strength and conditioning seems to be doing just fine. That's incredible, and that's something that I think that the Arkansas program needed that they didn't quite have before Sam Pittman. And I think those are very tangible statistics that you can read to say, okay, I think that this strength and conditioning program is doing quite well. Oh, and mentioning scary Lex Luthor, Landon Jackson, he moved up to 280 pounds, and Coach Pittman said that he's still running over 20 miles per hour on his GPS with his GPS numbers. So that's a physical freak, and someone who may have just blossomed into a top 3 round NFL guy who I'm sure did not have aspirations of that coming out of high school. Outside of that, though, a lot to replace with Kendall Briles and Barry Odom both leaving the program. Um, but it's interesting that even with that loss, right? Um, Arkansas is expected to be a top 25 team to start the season. They're a consensus top 25 program, and I expect them to finish the season as a top 25 program. So this is just Sam Pittman's fourth season, and they really went from probably the bottom feeder in the West to now. Um, Above the middle of the pack in the SEC, and a team that you circle every year if you're an SEC coach, and you look at and say, hey, we got to be prepared to play this team because of some of the unique things that they do, especially with KJ Jefferson at quarterback. Mark, what are your thoughts on Arkansas after the press conference, and how do you feel about Sam Pittman and what he's got to do to replace both his offensive and defensive coordinators this season?
Yeah, absolutely. So they bring in a name that a lot of Arkansas fans still remember, Dan Enos, and he comes over from Maryland, but he actually coached with Sam in 2015 through 17, I believe, at Arkansas, and then kind of went on his way to making his way over to Maryland through a couple other stops. So I think that's a big question. This offense has definitely got some good pieces. Uh, Bringing in an offensive coordinator is always um, an interesting time, right? I could see maybe the first couple weeks maybe starting a little bit slow. Now, Dan Enos last year they had a good passing game, not a very good rushing game. They were very, I would say, middling to lower end on the rush end, um, but they were very good in the red zone. I feel like that's an issue. That was an issue for Arkansas last year. So I do see some improvement for Arkansas you know, as far as the overall personnel. I think that they got somebody that Sam Pittman is going to be more. We talked about that word alignment, going to be more aligned with, um, and so I feel good about this offense. The jury's still out on the defense, right? I mean, this was just a really really bad defense last year. Um, that cost them several big games last year. Um, they bring in Travis Williams. Um, I don't know a ton about this guy. We're going to see. Uh, he was a defensive backs coach at Florida State. Um, so yeah, that I don't know, man. What do you think about this defense?
Yeah, a lot of questions. I just don't see them, um, changing things. If they've got more of these athletic freaks like Landon Jackson, who clearly is a workhorse and worked his tail off to gain 44 pounds over the offseason and maintain his athleticism. If they've got guys doing that, if they've got 10 other of these guys, that did that this offseason, that maybe they flipped the script. But I don't expect too much from their defense. They're going to be relying heavily on their offense once again this season, and an offense that really features KJ Jefferson in the passing game and in the running game, and also Rocket Sanders, who I think uh, just might end up being the best running back in the SEC. I know he's an All American, preseason All American. This guy is an absolute rocket, and like I said, gained 10 pounds this offseason and is running faster than he was last season.
Can't
So,
wait. Can't wait to
um,
see Rocket Sanders.
big,
That's a bad dude.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments that you have on Arkansas before we move on?
Uh, Woo Pig Suey. I guess that's about it.
Woo Pig Suey, absolutely. So let's take it. I think that pigs typically like the swamp. They may not like this swamp though. Down there in Gainesville, Napier heads into his second season as head coach. Um, he spoke about his new facility. I didn't realize that Florida had gotten a new facility, but he talked about, and at first it was kind of weird, honestly. I'm reading, I'm listening to Coach Napier talk, and he's talking about how he's talking about Florida as a school, as an athletic program, and not so much the football program, right? And I mean, he went on for a solid 6 minutes, 7 minutes before he even really got into football at all. But it was a little odd to me that he talked about how, the baseball team made it to the national championship, and how they have all these trophies, from other programs, and how he gets to coach with all the head coaches of all these other, sports divisions and things like that. And I was like, where are we going with this? And eventually he did arrive to his point, I guess, and in talking about his football team. One of the things that he brought up is that, like I mentioned, they have the new facility, and this facility is helping create a cohesive unit, and it's a place that the players want to go. Not only is it state of the art, but the players want to stay in the facility and hang out with each other and play games together, and really kind of build that camaraderie. And I think that that'll lead to more discipline in the team that I just think Florida has been lacking over the years. Really going back to Jim McElwain. But hopefully this does work out for Florida. Another byproduct of this new facility is that may have something to do with their recruiting success right now, as they're boasting a top 3 recruiting ranking right now. Florida, as of late, hasn't really lived up to their potential, but they're another one of these teams that has a chance to really be one of the powerhouses in the SEC if they stay in the top 5 in recruiting, which they're more than capable of in a talent-rich state like Florida. Um, I mean, this team can move mountains for seasons to come. What's your outlook on Florida and Coach Napier in this second season?
Yeah, well, you know, look, I'm gonna be candid. I have no reason not to. Uh, I like Billy Napier as a dude. I think he's got a nice, calm demeanor, and I do think that they've got uh, discipline and culture things that they had to work on at the University of Florida when he got there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It seems like over the last few years, Florida has been a team that will quit on you as the season goes on, as they don't, as things don't go their way. Um, I I'm not very high on this team this year, Mason. I'm just be honest with you,
Hmm.
and I don't. Obviously, Vegas isn't either. I couldn't recite their over under right this second, but I know it's not good. This coach is giving it all he got, and I
Hmm.
know he's giving it 100%, and um, I just don't. Great facilities are great to have, and but every team in the SEC has great facilities at this point. Vanderbilt has an amazing facility, So I just whereas I do hear him and. You said he didn't want to talk about football. Well, you know what? I don't know if I would want to talk about football right now if I was the football head coach at Florida. Um, so yeah, I appreciate Billy Napier doing what he can, but I feel like in the recruiting class, hey, that will help. The recruiting class will help. You've got to bring in high school talent. We talked about it earlier. You're not building an elite roster with all transfers. They're going after high school talent, and they are starting to get it. And I think that is a great thing. But you have to that recruiting class isn't going to do anything to help you this year, and they're more than likely not going to do anything to help you a whole lot next year. So uh, there's a couple year gap there that I feel like Florida fans are going to have to be patient with Billy Napier if they want this to work with him. And I think Florida has been a team that's been too quick to pull the trigger on coaches with certain things. So this is a no doubt a very interesting storyline going into 2023. Billy Napier, I'll probably put up a picture right here for you. Uh, Dude should totally grow his hair out. I don't, I don't know if you saw that picture. I mean, uh, the
Yeah.
man looked biblical. I mean, he just looked like a biblical figure. And but all jokes aside, I think they're in for a rough one. I believe he's kind of batting in the hatches and um, deflecting and avoiding some conversation about football, and I think that's probably a wise move because I don't think Florida's going to be very good this year.
Yeah, I mean, highlight as a coach, you've got to highlight the strength of your program in these type of press conferences, and I think he certainly did that. Talking about going back to this new facility that they have. Um, Florida has notoriously not spent money as an athletic department on the football team, and it's mind boggling to think that they won those championships with Urban Meyer, but they've always been behind the eight ball when it comes to facilities. So this is them, and they're trying to catch up. They're still way behind, the powerhouses in the SEC. So for them to be, even doing this is kind of remarkable for Florida. But like I said, they're still behind, and other teams are building more facilities and having more of these pumping more money into the program, and Florida just hasn't been doing that, and you're really not going to see that until Florida has a by most SEC teams a fantastic season, and by um, Florida fans' expectations, I think their standard would be like 10 wins,
Mhm.
right? I don't see Florida getting to 10 wins this season, not
No,
at all. So maybe they've got a quarterback named DJ Lagway coming into their program next season, but then he'll be a true freshman. So maybe you give him another year, and maybe you're looking at the 2025 season being one that's more competitive. But you're not going to have buy-in from the fans and from the alumni base until you can win 10 wins. Not at Florida. That's not going to cut it.
yeah,
And you mentioned, they and the staff have to be patient. And Florida, of all teams in the SEC, have been known not to be a very patient program, and not a very fun one to work at if you're not winning.
yeah, and in today's time, we've got the collective agreement, the collectives that work in each city of these big college teams, and you've got money being diverted into NFL or NIL coffers instead of going towards those facilities. So,
Mhm.
I think it was perfect timing for Florida. I don't think you want to wait and plan on doing something in you know, 27 or something like that because, you know, we're at a time where a certain amount of money's got to go into the NIL stuff if you're going to be an elite team because, um, you know, that's the reality of this. People are buying players and paying them to come play football and do these endorsement deals with these teams. So, um, with that being said, money's being diverted in different directions. Um, so I think it makes it more difficult. Whereas you used to could go find, Mister Florida Rock Company that paves all the roads in Florida and say, hey, we need a couple $1,000,000 towards our thing. Well, sorry, my couple million already went to the NIL collective. So I guarantee you're seeing some of those scenarios out there as far as fundraising and things like that. So just something to think about. Happy for Florida. Glad that they're getting some of that stuff updated. Uh, I'm a firm believer that college football is a little bit better when Florida's better.
Mhm.
And uh, that balance from the East and West, um, has always kind of hinged on whether or not Florida and Georgia, could get going at the same time, and um, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But when you got somebody like Georgia coming into your backyard and recruiting just as well and better than you are, that make and Alabama and LSU and all these teams, well, and I didn't even mention all the Florida teams. I mean, my gosh,
Right.
it's like Texas or California in the sense that there's so many different teams in Florida for kids to stay home and play big time Power Five football. You add UCF to that mix, so um, yeah, Florida is in a challenging position. 2006 and 2008 are a long time ago now, and it's been a while since we've seen a team like that at Florida, and I'm interested to see how Billy Napier is going to put a team like that together again in Gainesville, or if they're going to give him time to do so.
Right, and they've got a hit on quarterback, and I think that they've tried to do that, and they've been mocked kind of for their transfer portal additions at quarterback. Um,
Yep.
but I think rightfully so. I think that they swung and missed on a lot of the transfer portal guys that they initially were targeting, and kind of had to default to who they got. And it's going to be interesting to see how they develop. Whoever ends up taking the reins there down in Gainesville. One team that also had to go out and get a transfer quarterback, and the last team on our list for coaches who have spoken at media days so far, as we record here on Wednesday night. The University of Kentucky and Mark Stoops. Coach Stoops steps into his 11th season as head coach, and he went out and speaking of transfer quarterbacks, got an impressive quarterback in Devin Leary from NC State, and I think is really potentially one of the more impactful transfers of the offseason in all of college football. Um, I have high expectations for Devin Leary. I think he's walking into a better position than Will Levis was in last season. They also shored up the offensive and defensive lines to get a little bit more physical up front and kind of play that Kentucky brand of football that we're so used to seeing under Mark Stoops. Um, do you have anything to add for Kentucky for this season before I go any further on on where they're at and what they're projected, or any thoughts on Devin Leary as a quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely. So Devin Leary was a good quarterback at NC State. You improved the offensive line, from what I understand. They brought back in Liam Cohen as the offensive coordinator. He had left and went to the NFL, and now he's back. And before he left, man, he had this offense humming. Okay, and um, ended up, they had a NFL quarterback leave from last year, Will Levis, that really benefited from Liam Cohen whenever he was the offensive coordinator there. So, um, I do, in my mind, Kentucky is trending up, and Mark Stoops is such a sturdy individual. It just seems like, talk about a guy that, you know uh, you'd want to get around the big green egg and cook some steaks and have some bourbon. That guy, he'd break out a stogie and yeah, clip it for you, and it'd be a damn good one. That guy, I really like him, and the fact that Kentucky has held on to him as long as they have really
Hmm.
really kind of blows my mind, to be honest with you, because I mean, as a longtime watcher of the SEC, I can definitely remember days when Kentucky was just a laughing stock. And um, now I've been in that stadium in Lexington and watched teams absolutely drum them, and and the fans not even flinch. They were so used to it. And you dealt with the comments about, oh, we're a basketball school. No, this is a football school now, and I they're trending up in my mind. So Kentucky is a team that I'd like to keep my eye on, and in that SEC East, that third spot I think is up for grabs, and I will be interested to see if Kentucky doesn't try to reach out and grab that.
Right, and I think that they're more than capable, like you said, this year, and they'll be one of the teams that I think will have the biggest comeback from last season. I thought last season was just pretty abysmal for Will
Yeah.
Levis, and and Kentucky by their own standards, by Mark Stoops' own standards. This is a great program. 11 seasons that Stoops has been there.
Wow.
They have a great fan base. They have a passionate fan base, and this is Kentucky football is a good brand of football nowadays. And this is when you beat Kentucky, that's a win. That's an impressive win,
Yeah.
and I don't think anybody's doubting that. It just I don't think that they could ever get enough credit for where they were 10 seasons
Yeah.
ago to where they're at
You
now.
can say what you want
Um,
about Kentucky every time you play them. You know it after you got done playing them. They're physical.
I think
They've
so.
got a
Yep.
brand of football there in Kentucky, and that's what being a great coach is all about, is having your brand, your flavor, and he has definitely brought that to Kentucky, and that I it's right on up there with James Franklin at Vanderbilt,
Hmm.
being able to go there and win before he went to Penn State. I put Mark Stoops right up there with James Franklin as far as that goes. Um, and like I said before, turning chicken poop into chicken salad. That guy, um, just a stand up guy, and I got a lot of respect for Mark Stoops for sure.
Absolutely. Well, those are all of the teams who have spoken so far. Again, as of Wednesday night, those are all the teams and all the coaches who have spoken so far in SEC Media Days. Coming up tomorrow, you've got Ole Miss and Coach Lane Kiffin at 10:05, Coach Shane Beamer at 11:30, and Coach Josh Heupel at 1 p.m. to close out SEC Media Days. I will certainly be paying attention to those three. I think that this is probably the best day overall for the pressers.
Get
You've
your
got
popcorn
characters
ready.
in Coach Lane Kiffin.
Get
Yeah,
your
there you
popcorn
go.
ready, baby.
A little throwback there to old Kiffin. Uh, but two very interesting characters in Lane and Shane. They should have their own podcast. Actually, that'd be really fun to listen
Lane
to.
and Shane.
But
Hell yeah.
Lane and Shane, get on the train with Lane and Shane. There you go. Um, but yeah, so we will be covering that hopefully on Friday night, and hopefully Saturday morning we'll have a show out there for you on the rest of SEC Media Days. One of the other things that we're putting together right now for that show is a list of our individual best games of each week, and where we're gonna kind of compare and contrast our best games, our most impactful games, biggest games. So you all can kind of just kind of set your schedule so when these games are taking place, and not to get involved with any weddings on those days, or
Mm.
any sort of you know uh, baseball games or anything like that. Actually, last night I was getting tickets for me and my family to go to a Braves game, and initially, I was looking for a night game. I wanted it to be nice and cool. We're looking at the end of the season. So initially, I had set it up for Saturday, September 30th. And I thought, it's early in the season, right? It's not going to be a big game. Well, I go back and check after I bought the tickets, right? $480 later, I go back and check, and that's the day that Georgia plays Auburn, and it could end up being a night game. So immediately, I'm texting all my family after we already confirmed all the dates and everything. I'm having to text my family and say, "Hey, we're not going to be able to do that because Georgia plays Auburn that day, and I don't know what time it's going to be at yet." So then I had to go back and buy tickets again for Friday night because Ticketmaster doesn't just refund tickets. So I had to buy, tickets for Friday night, and now I've got to hope that somebody on StubHub sees my tickets and wants to buy them so I can get my money back. So
Atlanta Braves are a hot
uh,
ticket, so I think you're going to be all right
I think
on
I'll be
that.
fine a little closer to
Yeah.
that game time, but
Just went to Truist Park
um,
last night, and it was smoldering hot, and nobody even flinched, and everybody was packed in there just the same. So I don't think you'll have any problem selling those tickets. That's for sure.
Well, to be determined. I'll keep our 10 watchers right now posted on that to let you know how that goes.
And folks, let me just go ahead and let you know. I'll go ahead and spoil this for you right now. Week 0 sucks. It's
Absolutely.
bad. It's so bad. So if you got something to do, go do it week 0, man, because
Mhm.
there ain't a damn thing to watch. And I'm gonna watch every minute of it for everybody, and I'm gonna soak up as much of it as I can. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that I won't be watching it, but I will tell you right now that week 0 sucks. But the rest of those weeks, we will be breaking those down, and man, nothing gets your juices flowing like looking at all those matchups. And probably what I'll do too is I'll pull up the spreads on some of those games. Not every spread is out right now, but spreads on some of those big games are out, and so we'll be able to even get into some of those spreads, and maybe you folks can find you a diamond in the rough and get your money to the betting window before everybody else does.
Yeah, and speaking about being able to catch our upcoming shows, the best way to do that is to subscribe to our podcast. Obviously,
Click,
it does us.
click, click, click.
There you go. There you go. It does us a lot of good, obviously. We're not, as Mark kind of led the show off, saying, we're not here trying to monetize our show necessarily so that we can get rich off of YouTube or anything like that. That's not what a college football show is about. Um, but we do. I mean, we would like to monetize so we can pump that money back into the program and give you guys a great product. That's the ultimate goal, is to reinvest everything that this podcast is able to bring in back into the program and give you guys a great quality product. And one of the ways that we can create a better product is if you also comment and let us know. And I'm not asking you to comment because it helps out with the algorithm or anything like that. If you know about YouTube, then you know. But I'm asking you to comment because I genuinely want to know what it is that you're interested in so that we can tailor this show to you, the viewer, and hopefully create a product that you're interested in. And I guarantee you, if you're interested in it, then someone else is as well. So the more comments, the better. Help come be a part of our program, be a part of this community that we're trying to build, and get in early and let's get to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah, anybody that you know of around you that leaves their phone sitting there, wife, child, please grab it and just go ahead and subscribe. You're not going to get in trouble. Nobody's ever been to jail for subscribing to a YouTube channel on someone else's behalf. So if that's what it takes, folks, just go ahead and happen so that we can keep doing this. I kid, but in the same vein, I'm not kidding. Go ahead and like and subscribe, and that way we can keep bringing you the college football news and updates and reactions, and build this show up to give you the best version of that.
Yep. And with that, until next time, folks, I've enjoyed it, and this has been really fun from the First and Long podcast. Mason signing out.
1st and Long.